It's episode 75, Why You Should Fail Fast and Early with Brooke Janousek. We talk sunscreen packaged as condoms, coupled with the words, protect your skin. It would have been a PR disaster. Find out the story. We're going to try and cover as much as possible why brand and performance marketing needs to be on the same team, knowing when to try something new and when to stick to the basics, and why focusing on the outcome is starting to eclipse the traditional marketing persona. This is the Johnny Ross Fractional CMO podcast. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Johnny Ross Fractional CMO. I hope you're well. We are live on LinkedIn. We're live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. You may be listening on the podcast. Thanks for being here and being such a great listener. Today, I am so pleased to say that I've got Brooke Janousek with me from Los Angeles. How are you, Brooke?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You're the founder and CEO of the Grow CMO. Tell us about the Grow CMO.
Yeah, well, it is a fractional leadership solution for effective marketing. So I'm essentially a fractional CMO for businesses who are looking to have strategic leadership in their marketing departments.
And we're going to talk about why you should fail fast and early today. We're also going to step into all sorts of different topics around how to be clear on your message. We're going to talk about performance marketing versus brand. We're going to talk about how to stick to the basics, get to know your customers, and focus on the outcomes. So there's lots of different topics we're going to step into, but one of the biggest things that this podcast is about is how to learn, how to failing fast, and you know, from my understanding, you've got a really memorable big fail. So I would like to hear about it. It was was it at one of your first ad agencies?
Yes, it was 20 years ago. So if I'm dating myself there, and give me a pass for some of my references that will be coming. But yeah, I was my first job out of grad school at an ad agency, and I was feeling good. I was very excited to be at this agency and had a really big client that had decided to sponsor one of the university athletic teams in the area. And at the time, the team was very popular. Thousands and thousands of people attended the games. And one of our ideas was during this weekend to sponsor the series and to provide something of use to the fans. So we've all been in those situations where the client wants to give out swag and they want to give out, beer koozies or something with their logo on it. And we thought, okay, let's do something that's actually useful that the fans could use. So we had this brilliant idea that because it was a weekend in May, that these families are going to be attending the baseball game, and why not provide them with something like sunscreen? So, right, that seems like a pretty safe, pretty safe giveaway, right?
It's a great idea.
And so we went back and forth with the client on what we were going to say on the packets of sunscreen. And our copywriters came up with, really clever lines, and the client pushed back quite a bit. And we ended up with a line that said, protect your skin like we protect your assets. So again, pretty harmless. It seems like it would fit the bill, and we're getting, clever in some wordplay, but okay. And the weekend, it's the week of the series, and I arrive at work fairly early in the morning, and I walk in, and my desk is filled. Like I'm talking like the entire desk covered in condoms. And I thought somebody was playing a joke on me, and I thought, okay, funny, what, and I'm looking at them, and my eye caught the word protect, and I thought, oh my gosh. And I looked at them, and they were the packets of sunscreen that we are supposed to hand out to 30,000 people at not even just a baseball weekend series, but Mother's Day weekend baseball series.
Mother's Day.
So, this is just insanely funny, and I am mortified. And I thought, how did this happen? And the next thing I knew is I said to my boss, I said, we we can't hand these out. And I said, they look like condoms. And he's like, it's not so bad. And then, people are coming into my office laughing. So we knew that we had an issue on our hands. And so I needed to, as a young individual, I needed to call the client. This was my first oops of my career. And my boss said, I'm not going to bail you out. This is a chance for you to learn. And I want you to call them and talk through what happened. And what happened was I didn't see a proof. And that is on me. That was a mistake that I learned early on in my career, that I approved a proof on paper, but I didn't get an actual sample of the sunscreen. And had I done that, I would have seen very clearly. I mean, it was a square foil packet. There's no mistaking what it was, could have been. And so that was something I learned early on. But we turned it into a really great PR opportunity for the client. So the client did say, yes, no, we're not going to hand these out. There's too much risk here. But I ended up calling every single dermatology office in the city, asking if they wanted this for donations. And there was also a Cinco de Mayo parade coming up that we said, we could donate some of it to. So it ended up working out. But like I said, the lesson learned was I didn't get the sample in time to approve it. So that was on me. And it was a costly mistake that the agency had to pay for.
Well, I mean, yeah, what a mistake that is. And it's, a potential PR disaster, isn't it? But I also like how you turned it into giving to charity and actually getting use out of the product.
Mm-hmm.
You nowadays you're working with big organizations. Typically, it might be integrated marketing departments, maybe a CEO or president's brought you into that. And I guess one of my questions is, how do we're saying here, why you should fail fast and early. How can you actually go out there to say, right, my objective here is to fail? How do you create an environment where there is potential for failure, and how do you embrace that? And why is it so important to fail, so that, why is it so important?
Well, I think some of the clients that I work with, honestly, are startups, and the environment in itself, you need to be able to fail fast and fail often, because otherwise you're just going to get gobbled up and you're going to be behind the 8 ball. And so I really encourage a lot of my clients who are startups that we need to take risks. Now is the time to kind of, and I'm not saying just a financial risk, but a risk with pushing the envelope if we're going to use a certain message or try something. Maybe we're going to diversify our revenue stream and we need to try this. There are opportunities there where you have to be kind of scrappy. And that's a prerequisite, honestly, especially in being a startup, to just kind of be able to create an environment where it's okay if we fail, but we're going to learn from that mistake and we're going to build upon it. That's kind of the important thing. And I know a lot of founders, there's a kind of this bucket of founders that are very risk adverse. And so they tend to recoil a little bit when I push. And there's some that are like, yeah, let's go and let's go fast. And so it's kind of which camp do you fall into? But really important to, even as a leader, if you're inside an organization that's more established, to create an environment where it's okay, and to give your team opportunities to fail. Almost like give them some guardrails where it's okay if they fail. It's a safe environment so that they are able to learn from their mistakes and move forward, and not a huge cost to the business either.
So it's also about giving some leeway. It's about experimentation, trying different things. I like the idea of trying different messages. So sort of going out for something quite bold and big and trying that. We were just talking in the green room, and I noticed that you're a CMO of a startup which is Leash Pet Transportation.
Yes.
And this is an Uber for pets.
It is.
Just tell me more about that.
Yeah, Uber for Pets is exactly how we describe it to individuals. So in the States, Uber or any of the rideshare services, the owner has to accompany the pet on the ride. So with Leash, we are driving pets to their appointments. So if they need to be to the vet, groomer, daycare, or boarding, we will take them. And we just launched an app in April. So you schedule the ride via your phone, and then the driver will come pick up your pet, take them to the vet, and then bring them back home. So it's been an incredible resource for busy individuals like me. I started out as a user before I became their CMO, and it's a lovely service that's very convenient and time saving for individuals.
You started out as a user. I'm guessing you've got a dog then.
I do. I have a border collie, and he is full of energy most often. I don't know why he's asleep right now. Usually he's running around.
We have a toy poodle that's often running around the house.
Yes.
So, I mean, well, I'm just curious on that business. Is there anything that, I don't know if you can talk about it, but is there anything that sort of you've tried and failed so far? And also, I'm curious about what the long-term strategy is. Is there a big risk here that Uber's just going to copy it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we talk about often, to be honest. We feel that it's a novel concept, and yes, the Rovers of the world or Ubers of the world could come in and take the idea, and that only fuels us to keep pushing faster and to innovate quicker. And so we know that, Rover, for example, or WAG, they have individuals that do the pet sitting, do the dog walking, things like that. And for them to offer this service, it would kind of take away from maybe the pet daycares or the pet boarding facilities. And so what we're doing is we're really partnering with those businesses to say, hey, we're going to help you by, these busy individuals might not be able to bring their pets to daycare 3 days a week, but now with our service, they can go 5 days a week. And with Rover and WAG, that's kind of a threat to those businesses. So, but yeah, I think that's the risk anytime you put an idea out there that someone bigger is going to take it and they have the resources to scale it more quickly. And we just can't operate in fear like that. We have to keep, focused on what we're doing and know that we're offering a really good service. And if somebody wants to buy us, great.
Well, I mean, I love the idea of a bolt-on for Rover. I'm very familiar with Rover as well. And I'm just imagining at a click of a button how you could add leash to your to your sitting whatever. Yeah, very clever. Okay, so we're talking about why you should fail fast and early, and Brooks just talked about a fantastic fail that she had very early on in her career. Nowadays, well, you talk. We were just talking then about how it's important to fail and how it's important to sort of try different things. Performance marketing is all about performance. It's,
right.
That's where that it's all about ROI. It's all about the CFOs constantly focused on is it performing. How do you bring in failure into performance marketing? How does that work?
Yeah, that is a great question. So one of the things in my previous role that I was responsible for was generating leads for the entire franchise system. And you're absolutely right. The CFO is looking at, okay, what's our return on ad spend? And are the dollars being spent effectively? And the CEO was also very interested in, have we hit our lead goals? Because this is how our franchisees eat, essentially, literally and figuratively. So there is less room, I feel like, for error. But and I was also coaching the franchisees, but how I set it up was, if we have our budget, let's set 70% of our budget to things that we know are tried and true. We have the data to know that it has been working, that we're getting a good return on our spend, and it's generating leads at the allowable cost. But then let's, set aside 20% for things that we want to try. So maybe it's something that we've heard other franchisors or other people in our industry have tried. We haven't tried it yet, but we're going to try it now. And then 10% was contingency. So I felt like, again, still creating a safe space to quote unquote fail, but it wasn't super risky because most of our money was invested in things that we knew were working. And so, for example, now again, this is 5-6 years ago, part of that 20% was allocated to Facebook because at the time, not a lot of people had ventured into that space yet for paid lead gen. And so we wanted to see, okay, how is this working? Well, it's a really low cost per lead. The conversion rates weren't totally there. And then now that has changed. So even going back to the leash client, I'm very hesitant about TikTok still.
I was about to bring up TikTok. I was
Yeah,
literally about to
yeah.
bring up TikTok.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant on it. I think it depends. This kind of gets into the brand versus performance marketing discussion. I think TikTok is a great awareness play. And again, it depends on the brand and it depends on your objectives. So in order for people to book rides, we're still very regionally focused. And I just feel like TikTok goes to the masses. I don't know that that is a responsible or effective use of our dollars when people in California could potentially see the video and we don't offer the service there yet. So.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Mhm.
So building on that, you talked about how brand versus performance marketing. How
Mhm.
do you find that sweet spot? And in fact, I hear you talking about how they sort of need to be on the same team.
Mhm. Yeah, they do. I think a lot of people, if you look at really large organizations, they've separated their marketing teams into brand marketing and performance marketing. And one of my favorite people that I've never met but would love to meet someday, Jim Stengel, he has the CMO podcast and he talks about this quite a bit. And this is where I've learned a lot. But even through my career, that they need to work together. And so again, when it comes to performance marketing or that lead gen piece, if you don't have a brand that has a strong presence or that people know who you are, what you stand for, understand your position, it's going to make it that much harder to generate the lead. So having all of the, different stages of the funnel working together. And it's also really difficult to convince a leader of an organization to invest in brand marketing because they want something tangible. They want the result. They want to say, I can attribute the sale, the lead, the appointment, whatever it is to that particular ad. And brand awareness is that it's awareness. It's like, how are we filling the funnel? How are we getting our name out there? How are we getting people to understand what we stand for? And that's harder to attribute to. And so I always challenge those individuals to think, are you willing to invest the time and money that it takes to build your brand? And do you have the patience for it? And do you understand that you can't just go out, try and do lead gen without some sort of information as to who we are and kind of priming the pump? So I think those two should work together and hand in hand. A strong brand is only going to help aid your performance marketing.
Yeah, there is that constant battle, and you've got sort of head of brand really like,
Mm-hmm.
come on, we need to invest in this
Mm-hmm.
and that tug and you say in large organizations you get these departments separate, but actually I find in most organizations there's just lots of silo working,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got different teams trying to do different things, and actually you just need joining up, and there'd
Mm-hmm.
just be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Talking of which,
Mm-hmm.
joining up and thinking about the customer. So
Mm-hmm.
you talk about getting clear on what the customer wants. Are we
Mm-hmm.
still in 2023 not focusing on the customer?
Sometimes, unfortunately, no. There are a lot of companies that I've encountered that say, we know what our customer wants. And then I ask, okay, when's the last time you asked them? And it's been 9-12 months. And to me, that's a long time in the world of advertising and marketing and consumer insights, because our perceptions and our feelings and attitudes change about products all the time. We're influenced by so many different things, just from the accessibility that we have to news and social media. And so, yes, there are people that still think, okay, every 3 years is probably a good amount of time for me to do some consumer research. And every year you need to be, staying on top of it, or using something like an NPS, like a Listen 360 or something like that for NPS, so you can get that real time feedback, so that you can see, okay, this is exactly what our consumers are asking for, and are we delivering upon that?
But there's not always the desire and the belief
No.
that investing is a good idea in this.
Right. It's viewed as an expense. And
Yeah.
so as marketers, we need to still do our job of proving the value. Like, why are we doing this? Because if we just are guessing, we might be spending more money just doing A/B testing than if we just went out and did a quick survey and asked. And you don't have to have these intensive brand studies. There's a time and place for those as well. But if it's just like, we're going to market with something, let's just kind of pressure test it a little bit. There are so many ways to do that very quickly and effectively through polls, a quick email survey, doing a couple phone calls. You don't have to have this huge focus group to dive into. So I think that's what CEOs particularly think, is it's going to be this $100,000 project.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We're live right now, and we've got comments coming in. I'm going to read a couple out. If you are listening or watching right now, you're very welcome to ask Brooke a question. If you're on the podcast and listening afterwards, welcome. Thanks for listening. Feel free to tag us afterwards and ask questions. There'll be details in the show notes as well. But listen, thanks for being here. So Kent Huffman was talking about, have you ever tried building a fail fast component into your marketing plan? I think you've sort of answered that with that percentage. I don't know if you'd add anything to that.
Yeah,
but
no.
I very much like the idea of the percentage that you talked about.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Kent. I appreciate it. And I think the other thing that I like to do too is tell, like, I don't care if I'm giving away any trade secrets here. There's plenty of business to go around, but I like to tell organizations, like, I can help you not make mistakes that you've made in the past. And so, like, let's go through in the discovery process, what have you failed at before, so that we know how to adjust in the future. And so I think that transparency and being a little honest about how I'm different than others does come into play.
Robin talked about, is there a benefit in using platforms like TikTok? We've already talked about that to grow more internationally, even for a local platform, just to create brand awareness in the event of expansion.
Absolutely. Yes. And that is part of our expansion plan. Knowing that we are currently focused on the Midwest, we do have our sights on some new markets, and TikTok 100% is part of that expansion plan. I think from a performance marketing standpoint, to just go out and do that would not have been fiduciarily responsible for the client, because we just didn't have the awareness yet. But yeah, she's absolutely right. That is a key component of awareness.
Michelle Brigman on LinkedIn, she says companies also tend to ask customers what they want to know versus asking customers what the brand needs to know. It's such a goldmine of information to help shape roadmap and experience design. Is that what you find as well?
Yeah, it's funny that she's completely right. Sometimes once you've convinced leadership to get on board with some sort of customer experience survey, then the questions become very leading. It's like, no, we don't want to lead the answer. Like, we truly need to find out, is this going to be a viable product, service? What is our objective? And let's not try and sway the answers too much, because you can manipulate the questions in a way that you can get the answer that you want.
So let's talk about traditional marketing. And typically in traditional marketing, you'll have a persona. You're very much focused on who the target audience is, all about them. You talk about why focusing on the outcome is starting to eclipse that. Talk to me more about what you mean by that, and how that integrates into a really good strategic marketing plan.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a time and place and I don't think the personas are ever going to totally go away, but it's interesting how you know, traditionally we'll go through and say, okay, here's our key, who's our target audience. And then we develop her persona. Here's bubbly Brooke, and this is what she does, and what she is interested in and what she consumes. And I think that is perfect. But what do we want this person to ultimately do? And I think by flipping that and thinking, what is the outcome that we're trying to get? Are we trying to get them to enroll in a subscription? Are we trying to get them to purchase a service or download something? What is the outcome versus trying to say, okay, because Brooke likes XYZ, this is how I'm going to talk to her. No, that comes into play of where we're going to place our advertisements, but the messaging needs to be thinking and focused on what is the outcome that I need Brooke to do in order for us to hit our objectives. And so I think it's just a small mindset shift. And maybe it's just a vernacular thing, to be honest, but I just find that asking the client that question gives them a little bit more to think about versus, oh, it's a, you know, female in her 40s who consumes XYZ.
So, but let's say the outcome is I'm trying to sell, you know, I want people to buy more product. Simple as that. I want the outcome is I want people to buy more product. Well, how does
Mhm.
that, just tell me again how that
Yeah.
shapes the different thinking? Give me perhaps even with
Yeah,
an
and I
example.
think too, so it kind of goes back to your brand and performance marketing. So if the outcome is I want them to buy more of this widget, I'm trying to think, okay, yes, I use their demographic and psychographic information to figure out where they are. But then if I want them to purchase, what is the motivation that I can use to
Mhm.
inspire that messaging? And if it's not like, hey, check us out, it is very much a strong call to action of purchase. That shapes your messaging as well. So if the outcome is purchase, I need to be very direct. I find that lead generation marketing messaging is much different than brand messaging. So I've always had to push writers that I've worked with to say, let's be less conceptual and let's be very direct as to what we want them to do. And purchase is a short-term action. Like we need to get them to purchase. And so let's not, be clever or cute with the messaging. Whereas building a brand, we might need to, have a longer form message, and it basically changes the tactics that you use as well.
So there must be times to stick to the basics and make sure you're getting it right. And I guess that's that 70% of your budget
Mm-hmm.
where you're going for what you will already have learned with previous clients, what you know about the market.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other basics that you should be considering, or what's part of that basic mix?
Yeah,
What do you see as the basics? I guess it very much depends on the client and the
it
services and the
does.
products, but
Mm-hmm.
where's the most of the money spent?
Um, so I would say most of the money spent in my experience with the clients that I've worked with has been in digital. That was where a majority of the dollars were spent. But I've worked with clients in the home services industry, and then you diversify that digital spend into things like Home Advisor or Angie's List or things like that. Whereas a client that is in the tax preparation industry, that's obviously not where we're going to spend our dollars. But digital and traditional are synonymous now. I come from, 20 years ago when I was at that ad agency, traditional was radio, TV, and print. And now you throw digital in, digital and traditional. I don't even know that those words, are really that much different now. So it is very much who's the client, what's their objectives, and what's their industry when you look at what that mix is. But as I said earlier, that 70% really needs to look at what have we done in the past that has yielded good results, and how do we need to optimize to maybe get a 1/4% more out of it, or how can we plus that up a little bit to get even 5% more out of our efforts.
It's worth mentioning that you have your own blog, which is
Mhm.
Brooke on the Grow, all the
Yeah.
lessons on the road that you've
Yeah.
learned,
Hmm.
and it's quite personal blog. You have a passion around health and wellness. Tell me more why you have what's that to do with? What's the
Yeah.
passion there?
Yeah, I think just stemming from childhood and playing sports, and when I got to college, I wasn't an athlete that was going to get recruited by any, Division 1 school by any stretch, but when I got to college, I realized my identity was wrapped around the team sports. I loved the participatory aspect of it, and I was missing that, and so I really started getting into just working out for health while I was in college. And that has extended all the way through, decades of my life, where it's just very much part of who I am. It makes me feel better. I love talking about it with other individuals. I love just living that lifestyle because I feel like makes me a better marketer. It makes me a better sister and dog mom. So it's just something that I kind of stumbled upon and I really enjoy. And I'm very much of the mindset that you need to do what you find fulfilling. And it's something that just, I'm not doing it for an aesthetic purpose. I'm doing it for how it makes me feel about myself.
And that's a growth area of
Hmm.
your work right now in
Hmm.
the health and wellness space.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
so I'm going to finish on, if you had, uh, you know, a small budget,
Mhm.
and you needed to cut costs,
Mhm.
where do you focus? Where's the instinctive, how do you decide where to put the money,
Mhm.
and how to spend the money? And perhaps it's a process, perhaps it's that understanding of the outcome, it's that research. But
Mhm.
I'm wondering if there's any little nuggets that we've missed along
Yeah.
the way in terms of really trying to get to grips of a small budget.
Mhm.
Right, let's
That's
focus here.
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is going to be a very tactical answer and may not be applicable for every industry, but I'm going to use the example and what I've coached my franchisee clients on, my franchisor clients on, is looking at from a lead generation perspective, because most of the businesses are in a position where they're trying to generate sales or leads that will turn into sales. And so I just create this simple matrix. I just draw like 4 quadrants on a piece of paper, and I have your high cost per lead and high conversion in one corner. I have high cost per lead, low conversion rate. Then I have low cost per lead, low conversion rate, low cost per lead, high conversion rate. And so you start to plot that through. So if you're faced with, okay, we have a $5,000 budget a month and I need to cut it down to 3,000, what are we going to cut? I'm going to look at the data first and see, okay, what's costing me the most money and not giving me the best return? That's probably going to be something that I'm going to look at first. And also, where are we getting the best return for our buck? Maybe that's where we keep spending money, but it's really looking at that evaluation and what's going to continue to keep us marching towards the business objectives. And sometimes it's unfortunate that you have to cut, but I'm never recommending that you go completely dark on marketing, because you need to still, have a presence, have people be able to find you. I think there's ways that you can get really creative in stretching the dollars. And sometimes it's just maybe changing the messaging a little bit or getting a little scrappier, doing some grassroots. There's always PR efforts. There's a lot of things that you can do that, doesn't require completely shutting off your marketing spend.
I like the scrappy testing and trying.
Mhm.
It's very clear, if you're a sunscreen brand, don't go out there and create condom style packages with
Right.
protect your skin on.
Right.
It's not going to work. Brooke, this has been absolutely brilliant. You've made us think in terms of failing. Failing's a good
Mhm.
thing. Failing's a
It
good
is.
thing because that's the only way we learn, isn't it?
It's
It's
the only way we grow
yeah,
too.
yeah. So tell us, if people are interested in talking to you. We've got the your website, which is the Grow CMO. We've got
Mhm.
Brooke on the Grow. But where do you hang out online if someone's wanting to contact you? What's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn. I'm very vocal on LinkedIn. I'm very active. I have a newsletter. I post very often, and I'm very real about my journey and being vulnerable about, entrepreneurship, but then also sharing my opinions on brands, performance marketing, and consumer research. So LinkedIn's the best place to find me.
Brilliant. On that note, Brooke, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
If you've been watching, if you've been listening, we are very grateful that you've been here. This has been the Johnny Ross Fractional CMO, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.